You're listening to The Watchers, a show where two shambolic rubes watch movies and TV about New Jersey, kind of.
Kind of, yeah. Secretly about New Jersey.
Yeah. We watched Severance. I'm Andrea and Jodie very quickly because we can't do this forever and it doesn't actually matter. But there is a shot when...
we're going to get the Bell Labs stuff out of the way?
Yeah. It's Bell Labs, Film New Jersey, but the little thing that totally doesn't matter beyond that is there's a shot toward the end of season 1 when Mark is looking at a list of employee addresses and we get two zip codes. And they are and again, this means nothing because the show is not as much as I want it to be.
It's set in a fictional place.
Yeah, it's not actually set in New Jersey, but the zip code is like 07945 and 940 or something.
What?
Which, Jodie, do you know what county?
It's got to be Bergen, right? Because
Bergen County
662 was my zip. I haven't lived there in 30 years. I'm like, I know what it was.
It's Saddle River, and I think the other one is Ridgewood.
Wait.
Bell Labs is Holmdel, so it's not like
07. I know, but 07458 is Saddle River,
and then the other one is 07450.
Wait a minute.
I think that's Ridgewood.
07450 is Ridgewood. Holy shit. Okay,
Isn't that fun? Again.
Wait.
Just imagine listeners who've never listened before who are just looking for Severance podcasts. This is what it is, folks. Thank you for being here. I'm listening. I brought it up. I'm here to listen.
Wait. This part of the state and this part of the country has ties to the Manhattan Project. That's all I'm going to say. Like, secretive
we
government.
Gotta talk. Okay,
we're both making really large... We're both making really big arm gestures. This is not a video podcast, but just so that people know. No, my grandfather... Anyway, Manhattan Project is connected to that part of he's dead. The Manhattan Project has connections to specifically that like Mahwah, Upper Saddle River, Upper Bergen County area.
And let me tell you, I said before we started recording, I was like, I said, I'm starting to build some theories. And then I said, no, I'm starting to know what questions I want to ask, which was difficult for season 1 because the show is, it's such a mystery box that like it is hard to even know what kinds of questions to ask, but I'm starting to narrow them down, and I just think that's telling is all.
I agree with you. I was like, whatever, they just picked two random zip codes because, you're right, Bell Labs is in Holmdel, which is not Bergen County, but because there's a thing about that time. So Keir, to get it to Severance, Keir, their god, whatever, dies in 1939.
Allegedly.
But that's World War II time period, right? Now I'm getting really like over the top here.
Maybe hold on. I know I brought this up at the beginning. Let's save it for the end because we get some little.
Yes.
But what I will say is, I'm not saying the show wants us to know that it's or believe that it's set in Jersey, but I am saying, isn't that a fun little detail that could maybe provide us some sort of Easter egg information about what we should be thinking about for this show?
Correct.
That's all.
Correct. And what better podcasters to talk about this than two New Jersey obsessives, one from Bergen County with a mysterious grandparent. Because honestly, now I'm making connections between my grandfather and this whole thing. Okay, well I'm going to move on.
Oh, your grandfather, Keir Egan?
Yeah, my grandfather, Keir Egan. Okay, so we decided...
I mean, my pop did... I know it's not...
Do you want to talk about your grandfather as well? Is this the grandfather corner?
My father worked for AT&T, or my grandfather worked for AT&T.
Oh, yeah.
For years.
You know, and didn't I say this last time we talked about Severance? My aunt worked for Bell. I don't know if she worked at Bell Labs, but she worked for the telephone company when it was Bell in New Jersey in like the 70s, I want to say. So
did my pop and my grandma. That's how they met. Like she was a switchboard operator.
Yeah, so was my aunt Lori. Cool.
Oh, it's also
we're gonna
not
talk about
that crazy that two people from New Jersey have family members who work at AT&T and or Bell because...
Of course, yeah. It was one of the major employers.
Anyway, we'll see how much of that makes it into the episode.
Hopefully all of it. Maybe we find out that like one of our listeners also has a relative that worked at Bell and somehow we're all related.
Right.
You never know.
You and I are both clearly so excited to jump into this. Let's do just a quick, if you're somebody who watched the pilot with us and then burned through season 1 and haven't revisited since we talked about it, or if you're somebody who watched 7 years ago or whatever when season 1 originally aired.
1973.
I am not going to give an episode by episode or even point by point recap. I'm just going to kind of talk about the major kind of like themes and ideas and plot points that you should be holding in your head as we move into season 2. Mark Scout is our main protagonist, though there are a handful of characters who get a lot of screen time, obviously. We know that Mark is grieving the death of his wife, that he works at Lumen, and that he's undergone this severance procedure that splits the work-life person from the outside person, innie, outie. He's part of the macro data refinement team. We still don't totally know what they do. They're like sorting numbers based on feelings, woe, dread, frolic, and malice, and pulling them out, obviously, for negative emotions. Mark's been working there 2 years. Helly, new employee. She's got this like rebellious nature. The whole first season, a lot of it is her like finding her place sort of in this place.
Or trying to get out of this place.
Yeah, exactly. Outside of work, Mark is grieving. He's got a sister that he's very close with who has just had a baby. She's married to a guy who has written this seemingly like really vapid sort of self-help book, Rickon, He's a Delight. That book makes its way into Lumon Industries, the Severance floor, and they're all obsessed with it because they're babies who have no real...
And they've never read anything. This is like the most galaxy brain mind-blowing thing they've ever seen.
Yeah.
They think he's a genius.
Lumen has these weird cult-like practices. Waffle party, melon bar. They have... That's like the thing to me that is the... Like everything is weird. The waffle party is this weird psychosexual ritual that happens at the end of season 1. But even more than that is the one scene where they happen upon a room full of baby goats and the guy holding the goats says they're not ready yet.
They're not ready yet.
We find out, a big thing that we find out at the end of season 1 is there's the overtime contingency.
Overtime contingency, yeah.
I don't know what I was trying to say there.
Continuance is what it sounded like it was going to.
Probably.
Yeah.
Where you
because there's also the... what is the... We were just talking about Silo last week, and they had the something protocol.
The safeguard
protocol. Procedure. Yeah. Whatever.
So much like...
Too many things.
Like, what do you... Like corporate psycho-babble, but applied in these really weird, nefarious settings.
Yeah, one of my favorite recent Reddit quotes was, "It's kind of funny how sci-fi dystopia really has only a few different ways of playing out." Which is like, since we've just watched Silo again. Yeah, shout out to _Vogue.
Yeah, that's why, to go back to last week, when I was talking to you, I don't remember how much of it made it into the episode, but I was like, I don't know what could happen where I would be shocked. And that's also how I feel about Severance. The mystery of it for me is like maybe the why and or the how, but not the what so much, because there are only a few things that could be happening, really, unless this show is breaking ground that has never been broken before, which is like...
I mean, it took them 3 years to come back, maybe.
That's a really good point.
Maybe they developed a severance procedure for real, and we're all just like, we're all in our innies this whole time.
I'd be good at that. The big like revelations toward the end are you can activate your innie... Lumen can activate your innie outside. It takes a lot of work. There are a lot of steps to it. They managed to do this, and through the innies managed to do this, and through it we find out that or I should say Mark finds out that Miss Casey, who is an employee in Lumen,
the wellness employee,
is his dead wife. We find out that Helly is an Egan family member. She is
the direct descendant of Kier. Yeah.
Her
Helen
father
Egan.
is like the kind of like, seems to be like lead Kier at this point.
Yeah. James Egan. James with no S.
It's like Silence of the Lambs, James Gum.
Oh yeah, that's right.
we find out that, so we've been kind of finding out, but Irv, who's one of the 4 Macrodata employees, he's having a love affair with, it's not even a love affair because they don't have any like relationships inside of Lumen.
It's a courtship.
Yeah, it is a courtship with
That's
Christopher
what Dylan refers to it
Walken
as.
with
Yeah.
Bert. When Irv wakes up, he finds out he's been painting over and over again this long, dark hallway to a scary-looking elevator, just like obsessively.
And it's not the elevator that they all have used or seen, and it's not the hallway that they've all used or seen.
It's worse. Also, we find out that Bert is married, but that it seems like
Maybe.
Audi...
He has
Right.
a partner.
Yeah.
He's living with someone.
And I was just about to say something we don't actually find out until season 2. So I'll put a pin in that.
But we also find out that Dylan has a family. He has 3 kids and a wife,
Right.
Which is really jarring to him. But we find that out because in the previous episode, he has been woken up.
That's how we find out about the overtime.
Exactly. And one of his kids runs in and hugs him while he's been woken up as his innie. And that's what kind of starts this whole thing.
Right. And
so
is that
we have these 4 main... Yeah, we have these 4 main characters. They have their innies and their outies. And like over season 1, they basically get more and more curious about what they're doing there and what control this company has over their lives, and they make this pact to do the overtime contingency together. And you know, the season ends with all of them in their innies appearing in their outie lives and like trying to tell people to spread the word that
Helly especially, because she's got a platform to do it. It's like the night of a big like.
But they didn't know that ahead of time, which is crazy.
Yeah,
she wakes up right as she's about to go on stage,
and she does say like, "We're being tortured. I'm an innie." She is a kind of like blows the whistle on the whole thing.
Yeah,
that's season 1, and then 75 years of real time pass in our lives.
Yes.
But we start season 2.
Right there. Jump right back in. Yeah. So we decided that we were going to talk about the first 2 episodes of Severance, which I think unwittingly was a very smart thing. We didn't know what we were doing when we decided to wait a week, but
totally
these 2 episodes are like 2 sides of the same coin, literally. And so I think it's kind of perfect to talk about them as an introduction to the season.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to do a beat for beat of episode 1 and then episode 2 for that exact reason. We'll just move through what happens in this chunk of time.
Right. But I do think that we should talk about the 2 locations separately. Because I think if we try to bounce back and forth almost a la Yellowjackets timeline, it'd be too much.
I agree.
So we can talk about the innies and then the outies. I do want to point out, and this is just a point outie. Ew.
Yeah, I hated that. I'm so sorry.
I don't like it. I do just want to point out something that I saw on YouTube, Reddit, whatever, somewhere. Just a nod to the precision of the people who make this show. Those first couple minutes of both are timed exactly.
Are they? That rules.
Yes.
You can feel the weight, like the balance of it, but I didn't know. Yeah.
Someone lined them up with each other the first few minutes, and it's literally like to the minute when people come out of the elevator. In one, they're like, in the other episode, they've just got, it's like, it's timed perfectly. We should link to that. I'll try to find out where I saw that. It's very
cool. And there is that ticking clock in the
there's
in
a
the
lot of clocks
there.
in this too.
So
like we see the time that Mark comes in every day on the wall behind him. Like I looked at a breakdown of all of the timing, and it's like, you know, he has 2 full days. We'll get into this, but he has 2 full days at work, and then he has the day where he loses it and like runs to the office. And so the first 2 days, he comes in at like 9:04, 9:05, leaves at like 5 something. And then the 3rd day he comes in around 9:04, 9:05, leaves at 9:15.
Yeah.
So like it is exact. They're not fucking around.
So cool. And especially like it's obvious to say, and you and I are both not a video podcast, but our backdrops are both, you're in like the Severance, or you're in Lumen's night offices. I'm in Bellworks, not set for the show, but it's exactly the same because it's what it looks like. And just
I've got Kier's Lenin profile behind me. It's been pointed out, I'm sure you saw, that it's like looks just like a portrait of Lenin.
Oh,
like the profile. Yeah.
just the obsession with symmetry in this show, so that even the first 2 episodes are that way is very cool.
It's very, very cool.
Man, they
both start the same way too.
Yeah.
Both the first and second episodes start with the sounds of them right before they come back to their outies.
And then the also call back to season 1, the walk through the hallways.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens when you take 3 years to bring a show back. You can do all these fancy things if you take 3 fucking years. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This show is so fun to watch.
It really is. It really is. It's so funny. Like, I was listening to another podcast, probably what you're guessing I was listening to, and they were talking about how this was just after episode 1, how they really enjoyed the episode, and it was really fun and interesting and all of that, but they didn't have like an emotional connection to it. Mm. And I feel like I felt that way after episode 1 as well. And I think
I could see that
but that makes total sense because the people on the inside only have access to like a couple of years of life and emotion. They're children basically in their heads. So we can talk about, let's talk first about the innies, because it's funny. This is like, it's 2 flipped versions of the same timeline. Mm-hmm. So it is a little weird, but I think that the way that the episodes were structured is purposeful so that we are only seeing, we're kind of blind to what actually happened on the outside in the first episode. We're only hearing it from the company, just like they are. Right. And then we actually see the timeline, because in this first episode, we start with Mark just coming back to work. Mm-hmm. Right. So we don't know how long it's been. We don't know what's happened. You have to, it's so funny. Like, it took me a minute to remember, like, okay, so he just shows up at work. The last thing he remembers is looking at the photo of his marriage to Miss Casey. Right. And so as soon as he gets out of the elevator, he goes looking for the wellness department.
Right. Of course. Right.
That's why he's running up and down those hallways forever with all the fancy camera work that, apparently took them forever to make.
It's
apparently
so good.
They had a wrap party after that first scene was done because it took them so long to film. I saw an interview with Adam Scott where I think it was with Colbert, but I could be wrong, where they complimented his running. And he was like, really? Really? It looked good? He was like, and they asked him like who he'd modeled it on or something. And he was like, oh, Tom Cruise is the best runner.
I love
it's so funny.
that.
But when I rewatched it last night, I was like, no, actually it is a good run. He's got the arms involved. Like he looks like he's done it before, even though he's in a suit and dress shoes. Like, but he's running to try to find the wellness department, which I didn't even really clock the first time I watched it. But he finally gets to that end of that specific hallway where it would have been, and it's gone.
It's gone. And there are a lot of interesting things, but if you call back to season 1, that first opening, he's walking through those hallways so confidently, and it's a total labyrinth. It's not supposed to be easy to navigate, but he just
he knows where to go.
He knows where to go. He's been doing it every day, forwards and backwards,
his entire life.
It's
the only thing he knows.
Yeah. So just the like stress of all of this, and it is not so easy for him to navigate these halls right now. And not only is it gone, but like it's uncanny because they leave a shadow of it. Yeah. They didn't have to do that. They could have done clearly. They could have done anything. They could have boarded up that whole room, but they want, for some reason, they sort of want him to know that it was there but isn't anymore. It feels to me.
I also think that the thing we don't know yet that we will know the next episode, which I think we can just mention now because it's not a secret, is that it hasn't been a very long time. It's only been 48 hours.
Right.
And so that may have been the best they could have done in 48 hours, is just like block out those doors and cover them.
I think they could have, if they wanted it to not serve as some sort of warning to him, they could have made it a little less dramatic looking, I think. Something to note, there is somebody watching him when he gets into that room, and that's not a silhouette I recognize.
No, I saw someone mention that there was the guy who who I'd already forgotten about from season 1, who was one of like the security guys that we always saw that was, or one of the, it wasn't security, but one of the guys from Lumen that we did see that was killed by, she's the one that's doing the reintegration with PD, Dr. Vergabi. There we go. Thank you.
We didn't even mention the inciting incident is in season 1 is that Mark is contacted. The reason Helly is here at all. Curious. Wow. The reason that Helly shows up, it seems, is that PD has been fired, left, whatever, but has been reintegrated, which is supposed to be impossible. PD was Mark's like best work friend.
Yes.
Mark was his very good friend. And it kills him, we think. The reintegration.
Right. Reintegration sickness is a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But he's working with a doctor who claims that it doesn't have to be. It's just he.
Yeah, she says if
up.
he had followed my post-op instructions and not simply run away at the first sign of sickness. So yeah, and reintegration is not something that's supposed to be able to happen.
Right.
But Dr. Vergabi is a former employee that was the one doing the implantations. And so how did we get there? Oh, so the person that's in the hallway behind Mark, there's a theory that is that the closest person we've seen that looks like physically, shape of the body, is the employee of Lumen that she killed when he followed them to the so I mean that's just like it's the right white man shape,
right,
for it to be that person. It could be any other random white man shape. Anyway, that was a rabbit hole, but I just wanted to make sure that we mentioned Dr. Vergabi because that's going to come back a million times.
Yeah.
The guy's in the halls behind him. Then he walks over to MDR, Macrodata, and he walks in and he sees the new people. He sees Mark W., he sees Gwen, and he sees, I think his name is supposed to be Dario, but they don't tell us that. He just is the guy that speaks Italian.
Right.
And he sees these new faces, not his team. And then Melchek walks in with balloons for him.
With his
blue balloons with his face
them.
on it. Yes. And so he asks Mark to come to his office with him. Mm-hmm. And that's when we meet Miss Huang, who is a child.
Right. And the new deputy office manager or whatever her title is.
Interestingly, the name Huang means a couple things, but one of the things it means in Chinese is phoenix.
Huh.
Something that is reborn.
Yeah.
Just to put a little pin in that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, save it for the end, but there's no way that's not what's going on. There's just or this show is so full of red herrings.
Yeah.
More full of red herrings than any show has ever been, because everything happening, even just like that person in the hallway being shaped like somebody who's dead, is curious. Yeah.
So we find out a bunch of stuff here, some of which is true, some of which isn't. We find out that Melchek is the new office manager, floor manager. Mm-hmm. He's just moved into this office, it seems. Things are still unpacked, or not unpacked. And we get the official Lumen story that they're telling Mark about what happened. It's been 5 months. Their uprising spurred all these reforms. They tried to get the other 3 back, but they didn't want to come back. It's just Mark. He said, we tried for weeks. Another lie is that your Audi insisted on returning
right away.
He wants to hear from his colleagues that they didn't want to come back, and they say nope. Mark, Mr. Milchek, Seth says that's not possible. He says, also, enjoy your balloons.
Right. He also tells Mark that Miss Cobel, who has been going by Miss Selvig outside, was in love with him, had an erotic fixation on him, and
wanted to have a throuple with
him and his Audi. And his Audi. And that she's been fired, and that and that Milchek is really wrestling.
Of course, they threw the woman in charge under the bus.
Of course, and that Milchek is really wrestling with the guilt that the company can't believe somebody so sadistic made her way into this company.
So we go through this series now of the next couple of days, and during that time, we get a little bit more about the replacement people. Mark W's main concern seems to be that there can't be two Marks, so maybe Mark S can change his name. Gwen wants to know all about the outside world. What does wind feel like? What does the sky look like?
Sky? That really breaks my heart. I think I'd be fine. I live underground most of the time anyway. I hardly ever. Yeah. But I think I'd be really good at being an innie. But it is really sad that's...
She also kind of wanted to know if he found out what state they were in. I thought that was interesting, right? She's like, we all put... they were guessing Wyoming because they put that on their forms or something. She asked, did you see any buttes? Yeah. And we find out... Which is a great question.
Yeah. We find out when Mark W. gets fired that he was living in Grand Rapids.
He broke the lease in Grand Rapids,
that's
for Christ's sake.
It seems like 5X, the other branch that they came from was... That's Michigan. Yeah, that's not Wyoming.
That's correct, yeah. And so we find out kind of over time that 2 of the 3 of the new employees are from that closed branch in Michigan, and then the third was from overseas, from a much poorer Lumen outpost where the Egan statues were brooms with plates for faces, and instead of an elevator, there was a rope. I'm obsessed. So I want a whole show that's just the Italian Lumen office.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. And instead of the glass head that Mark got last season, he has a wooden carving that looks like a child did it of his own face as an award. But so we get all these really fun moments between the new people, between Miss Huang and Mark, where there's this moment where they're doing the ball game where they get to know each other, and he's asked to say something, and he decides to play the game and say I have 4 new friends, like so insincere. And Miss Huang is like, I need to remind you, I am a supervisor, not a friend. And Adam Scott's face, he goes through so many different emotions in that moment. He's like, I'm looking at a child. I hate this person, but this is a child. What am I supposed to say in this moment?
And I've already decided I'm going to play along, so I can't snap at her really. And then so he amends it, 3 new friends.
Exactly. And so we have this couple of days where Mark is trying to plot to get his old team back. He tries to frame Mark W.
That's when he writes...
the shambolic rube.
Milchick is a shambolic rube who goes by Milkshake.
Who goes by Milkshake, yes. But he doesn't even bother to disguise his handwriting. They obviously immediately know.
Just a reminder, he's a 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old maybe baby. Yeah. Like, it just doesn't... Mark's not stupid, but he's never had to really do something like this before. So why would he... You know what I mean? Like, it probably doesn't even occur to him to think about something like handwriting.
Right.
He's never seen a TV show.
No. He's never seen the sky.
The only music he's ever heard is what's associated with the music experience, whatever it's called.
Yeah, the music dance experience, I think. Yeah. The phrase shambolic rube is perfect.
Also, fetid moppet. People talk weird on this show.
We'll get to fetid moppet, don't you worry. That's next episode. But he's immediately caught. And I love that Mark W. says, clever way to secure the name for yourself, I suppose. And Gwen says, do you even have a brother-in-law, asshole? Anyway, he distracts...
Really good line delivery. They're both great.
Oh, they're both great. And then so Mark distracts Milchick by saying he did something to the kitchenette, runs to Milchick's office, hops on the quote-unquote intercom to the board, which we could talk about that, and just saying how he wants his team back. And then Milchick doesn't actually fire him in that moment, but he makes him leave at like we said, 9:15 in the morning.
Right.
And so we think maybe he's firing Mark. But he's not. Next day, Mark comes back to work. He sees the new team all leaving and cursing. Mark W. says, fuck Lumen.
I broke a lease in Grand Rapids.
Yeah. And then we start to see the old team coming back. I'm glad they didn't make us wait very long for this.
Yeah.
I felt kind of bad for the actor, Bob Balaban, and Yellowjackets. But I'm sure we'll see flashes of them because I do think that the fact that they're from some defunct branch called 5X is not nothing.
I know. I hope so.
I feel like we'll see them again.
Because it's interesting. I said to you after the first episode, I was like, it's funny because I'm glad we didn't have to wait for our friends to come back.
Yeah.
But it was a curious choice to me in that first episode before I knew we were going to revisit this timeline in episode 2.
Yeah, because those are 3 like real actors that you would not usually just give like 2 lines to and then discard.
Though we did cover Scream on this podcast, didn't we? And we know the Drew Barrymore of it all. So.
Right. But our team comes back. We've got Dylan first, then Irv, and then we see Mark kind of like glancing at the elevator waiting for Helly. Oh, yeah. And they come in right one after another. Like they're just a few minutes apart.
Staggered as per Lumen policy. There's a new painting on the wall. That is...
Kier pardons his betrayers. Yeah.
That's
for people of appropriate genders and general faces. Yeah. Yeah, we pretty quickly get them trying to figure out from each other like what happened when they were in the outie world.
I love Dylan so much. It's just
he's
like
the best.
He's so funny when Mark says they're famous, or like Mark says, they're famous or whatever. He's like, all of us equally, or is one of us a star?
Well, and when Irv comes in all upset, like Dylan comes in sort of like, did it work? Like, checking in immediately with Mark. Irv comes in really distraught. And Dylan says, what's wrong? You poor up there?
There's a really good, we'll get to it, but he's like, fuck, they've got easels up there?
Yeah.
He's just trying so hard to like have any frame of reference.
I know.
To act like this is, and he's always been this way. He's the one in season 1 where he's like really trying to make guesses even before things get like really plot heavy and nefarious. He really wants to sort of like feel like he's in some sort of control of what is happening by acting as if he understands the outside world, by being so good at his job. There's just so many.
Yeah. But he also fixates on injustices. He cannot stop talking about the fact that Milchick cut his belt.
Yeah.
He's like, I owe him a fucking belt cut. But before they can really do too much, they do a little bit of trying to catch up. But then Miss Huang comes in and Milchick wants to see them in the break room, which is where they were tortured previously and forced to recite the apology speech a million times.
Right. Oh, wait, one more really good. I'm so sorry. I just love him so much.
We can talk about Dylan's lines all you want. He's the best.
When Mark explains that they were 3 new employees, he says, who was me?
Yeah.
Like he just assumes, which I was also kind of expecting.
Absolutely.
Until, that they would just be a 1-to-1. But he explains it's not really like that. But I just love that question. Who was me?
Well, and so when they go to the break room, speaking of who was him, they're shown a video by Milchick that is theoretically going to be shown to every new Lumen employee that is all about the Macrodat uprising. God. That is a puppet version. This, I mean, like, this one scene almost makes me wish that Yellowjackets wasn't coming back for another 8 weeks. Like, I don't actually wish that, but you could pull this one scene apart for so long.
It's so wild.
Like the posters on the walls.
I'm a frolicaholic.
The old technology of the RGB projector.
Well, it's like even just that animation, like, is
wild.
Weirdly, like, I was gonna say not anachronistic. I was gonna say like outdated, but we don't know what the date is. We still don't know. We know they've said like what is the word I want? Outside of the show, like the show runners and stuff have said it's like vaguely here and now ish, but never concretely.
But the cars are
all
from
those
the 80s
cars
and 90s.
are like late 80s, early 90s. So, but
it's a combination of like space age technology, something whatever they're doing secretly, and then super old technology. And we've also got states that don't exist, and we'll talk about how when they mention it, actually I think it's in this video where they talk about the 206 countries. There aren't 206 countries.
Yeah, there's like,
and they live in a state that's abbreviation is PE. So it's like, it's not necessarily even our world.
No.
It could be like a different version of it.
Right. So all of that to say, it's so strange. And like, also.
And they show the kiss in the video. between Mark and Helly, and Dylan's like, what the fuck?
I know. Just to like remind everybody that they are being surveilled at all times.
Yeah. Because it shows at like detailed puppet versions saying the exact lines that they said.
I just, like you said, we could talk about the scene forever. I love this video so much. When they show Irv's like burn this place to the ground moment, and he's got the little flame hair, it's like a bunch like the heat miser. It's like very like Rankin Bass-esque stuff happening here.
Yeah,
I
definitely
down to that
triggered,
like reference. Yeah,
it triggered heat miser in my head immediately.
Yeah.
But we find so
hold on, did you look at who voices the building and the water tower?
It's Keanu Reeves. Yeah,
it's Keanu Reeves as the building, and Sarah Sherman is the water tower.
Oh, I didn't know that Sarah Sherman was the water tower. Okay. Yeah. So the building is talking. At some point it says, "You're in me right now," which is horrifying. This video, like one of the things that's so interesting about the company itself is the way the people that work for it speak. And the things that they say also, which are totally strange, but they speak in a sort of old-fashioned way. And then they talk about the bounteous new reforms that the Macrodat uprising has spurred. One of them is tasty new snacks, like fruit leather, cut beans, Christmas mints, and salsa. And then there's a puppet version of Dylan looking like he's like having an orgasm or something. And real Dylan's like making a face like, dude.
Food is so weird in this show. We could do a whole episode just on
pineapple
consumption.
bobbing.
Well, that would hurt so bad.
Yes, pineapples have come up now quite a bit in the first 2 episodes. They have a playful mirror room, which is also looks horrifying.
It's so funny because like they say playful mirror room, but they do show that it looks horrifying. And so
that's the thing. These new reforms or perks all look terrible, like terrifying and terrible.
Why would you show your hand there? Like it's like they don't.
In the video, the Helly clone puppet has her hands tied behind her back.
Yeah,
which
it's torture.
Yeah,
so
it's like waterboarding.
It's funny because it's like it feels more like a threat. Right, like it's like when they show the like anti-union videos as part of your onboarding at Walmart, where they spin it as if it's a positive, but it's really a warning. But it's so overt.
You're so right.
But of course, they're not showing this to anybody but these 4. There's no way anybody else is seeing this video.
So. No, this is for them.
Yeah.
But
so it doesn't matter.
But they've like played everything up. They've got the posters on the wall. There's one of the posters is a drawing of Dylan holding the 2 buttons. And so they're playing it up like these guys are heroes and they've made all these changes. And they tell them that by the end of the day, you can decide whether you want to stay or not.
Right.
So they have this little conversation. This is where Helly or Helena lies about what happened when she was on the outside.
Yeah, so...
And this is our first clue that things may not be what we thought.
Yeah, and like Milchick says, there's no mics or cameras, like you shouldn't be surveilled. But then immediately it cuts to when they're talking to each other. It looks like we're watching them through a surveillance camera. Yeah. There's like a little filter over it. So it's like...
of course there's cameras.
Right.
So Mark immediately is completely honest, tells them everything that happened. Dylan obviously didn't go out, so he doesn't have anything to say. Irv hedges about it, but it seems like it's more because he's upset than that he's trying to lie about it. And Helly or Helena just outright lies. Says she was in an apartment wearing sweatpants, watching TV, went outside to try to tell someone and found a gardener.
Yeah, and Irv catches it right away. He says a night gardener?
Yeah.
And she says, like, maybe he has a different job during the day. So I like that we know that, like, Irv at least is maybe feeling a little suspicious, which is good.
Yeah. And, like, the fact that the first person
there's no way that's not Helena, right?
No, I'm completely convinced it is now because of 2 more things that happened, at least. Like, this is where the suspicion is planted. Like a normal person wouldn't immediately think of the first person they would see when they walked outside their house would be a gardener. That's a rich person thing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think when I first run outside my house in the middle of the night, the first person I'm going to see is someone taking care of my property.
Right. Exactly.
So, but we'll get to why I'm convinced, I think, mostly in the next episode. So Irv is still upset. We have this sort of separation where like Dylan and Irv go talk because Irv's trying to leave. Mark and Helly have a little moment. And Dylan, I love this conversation.
Is so good.
Yeah. Dylan is trying to get him to not leave. Irv hugs him and is like, we realize he's using it to whisper about what he saw in his house. And Dylan says, like, because Irv says, I want the pain to be done. But if you leave,
says, like, right, it's death.
If you leave the job, you're dead.
Right.
Yeah. And so Dylan says, you know, Bert wouldn't want that because I don't want that because I would be sad and would be less productive. And I'm really good at what I do here, whatever that is. And so then Irv fixes Dylan's glasses.
Oh, it's so sweet. They're so tender with each other.
And he says, I'm your favorite perk.
Don't bring them into this.
It's love how sweet this is.
And especially because, like we were saying earlier, there's just no, like, that. I'm trying to like articulate exactly what I mean here. It's very sweet. They are clearly very good friends who care very much about each other, but their life is so small. Like, really, all that will change for Dylan is he will miss him and he will be less productive. Like, and that's heartbreaking that their world is so small. He's being honest with him here, but there's just but in a way that it's kind of like easy to forget because we see so much of Mark on the outside world and all of that. Like, this is all they have.
This is all they have. Yeah.
It's really heartbreaking.
And then at the same time, Mark and Helly are talking, or Helena, and we get a few important things here. One, this version of Helly says that their innie and outie are very much not the same people. We don't owe them anything. There's sort of a harshness that she has here. And she's asking about Gemma, his dead wife, and about Miss Casey. And it seems like she's digging for information a little bit. And then at the end of that, she says, like, assuming she's still here about Miss Casey, and says, strictly speaking, she's not your wife. But then she kind of, I think at the end of it, tries to pull it back.
Yeah, this is where it's a little like, huh.
Yeah. But she says she's one of us.
She says she's one of us. She also says, it's in this scene too, where she says, like, we don't owe them shit, right?
Yep.
Which is a little bit to me like, are they, and I don't even want to say are they. This is Helena, who has been under strict lock and key. We'll talk about this more when we get to the outie world and learn a little bit more about her. Right. But she's like clearly been following the family plan forever, and it probably hasn't even occurred to her that she could do anything else. And so I just think like it will be unsurprising if Helena ends up siding with the innies.
Yeah, I think in this moment, she actually means possibly the opposite, that like the outies don't owe the innies shit, because basically in the first season, Helly tried to kill herself to get out of this. And Helena basically recorded a video and said, you're not a person.
Right. And she believes that, but...
Right, but it's, you can see...
I have a feeling there'll be some cracks in that, you know.
Definitely.
And you'll need somebody on the cure inside if there is going to be a real rebellion, you know?
Yeah. So one of the last things we see, Miss Huang comes back and asks Dylan to come see Mr. Milchick. We see that they're trying to kind of drive a wedge between the group by offering Dylan something they don't offer everyone else because he has a family. They're creating this, what do they call it? It's really specific.
Outie Family Visitation Suite.
Yeah. And he says, you know, can I see my family here? And Mr. Milchick says, if you take the name of the room at face value, I'd say yes.
What the?
Why?
Hell.
Yeah. But he asked them to keep it a secret. So they're like trying to kind of drive wedges. Quick note, Miss Huang is playing an interesting computer game that is not macrodata refinement.
No.
But it is some sort of sorting game.
A lot of sorting. And then she switches to...
Yeah. A little hand game.
Old-fashioned water game that we were all obsessed with.
Yeah, except it's Kier. Got to get the little rings on top of Kier's hands. And then our last scene is the four of them coming back into the macrodata refinement room. And I noticed So I remember from the first season, I think that those cubicle walls were higher.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yes.
They're all looking at each other now.
Yeah.
Like, and when they come back in, like, there's kind of getting settled in. And so this is one of the other clues that I was going to mention, is that when Helly goes to turn on her computer, she can't find the switch right away. She's kind of feeling around for it. If this is the only thing you've done every single day, like, of your entire life, you know where the switch is.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
it comes right after we see, I think, Milchick's hand flipping a switch on the computer very confidently. And so it's, I think, purposely meant to be noticed.
Point that out.
Yeah. But, like, as they all come in, we get, like, a tiny bit of music coming in underneath them. It's like this, like, we're all getting back into it. Yep. Dylan throws out the remnants of poor Dario's little awards.
Thing. So
Yeah.
funny.
They all look kind of happy. They turn on their computers. They're looking at their files. And Mark is working on Cold Harbor. Cold Harbor is Mark's file. And
Is this the first time we've seen that phrase? I can't remember.
I don't think so, because I remember from last season there was a lot of discussion of the file names,
right,
and what they could refer to. There's a lot of sort of research that the Redditors have done around that. But his file is named Cold Harbor. It's at 68%, and as he's working on it, looking super happy and satisfied, we get a flash of Miss Casey / Gemma on his screen with a bunch of stats.
It feels to me, so I have that screenshot pulled up. It feels to me like we get a lot of information.
It's like he's building
here.
Miss Casey or Gemma.
Or
putting her back together.
Right. Or removing to a certain degree. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. He's clearly working
through her.
Cold Harbor is Miss Casey, I believe.
Right.
And I noted, I didn't notice this myself right away, but somebody had mentioned also the name of the file that Helly is working on. And I didn't write down the name of it, but I did write down that name is actually the name of the town in Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Because there are two things happening, either or both. They're figuring out a way to clean out bodies to put new people in, and or building slaves. It's a little bit of both. It's very like Get Out to me.
Or the opposite, like recreating people's souls / personalities after they've passed.
It seems like it's all of that to me. It feels like just figuring out how much control they can have over the human mind and body.
Right. And so I found the name. So Santa Mira is the file that Helly's working on, and that's the name of the town in Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Why are they giving it to us so... It feels to me...
I know.
They're giving it to us so clearly that's why a minute ago I put the pin in, or it's the most red herrings. But it's also like, how many other things could it be?
Yeah.
But then it also seems like this world is weirdly, feels to me, post-apocalyptic, but in a very subtle way.
Yeah.
Where it's like they're almost used to it at this point. And there's so much like there are just so many little... I should say, I went back and watched the last 3 episodes just a couple of weeks ago from season 1. So it's all of that is still very fresh to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, there's all sorts of hints like this. Like, Kier means in Gaelic Dark One. Like, the license plates have a Latin phrase on them, and it means, what is it? The cure for all mankind or something like that. The phrase. And then I just have to read this about Santa Mira, the town in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the name of the file that Helly or Helena is working on. The fictional town of Santa Mira first appeared in Invasion of the Body Snatchers 1956, where it was the site of an unusual alien invasion. Plant spores fell from space, grew into grotesque pods, then opened to reveal not seeds, but human beings. Duplicates, in fact, of people from the very same town. These pod people, a term popularized by the film, are like their original in every way, genetically identical down to their memories. However, they are entirely devoid of feeling, a condition that comes in handy when the clone dispenses with their progenitor. Andrea.
Right.
All of that from the name of a file. They're making this too easy.
Right.
Or they're just distracting us.
That's what I mean. Like, what? It's so fun. But so, like, to me, the most obvious... I know we still have to talk about the second half of what's going on here, but I just feel like so much of what we need for this theory we've already gotten. So it's like Kier wants to I mean, it's even called the Hall of Perpetuity.
I know. Let's put a pause on the theories and stuff and get through the second episode, because I think that the second episode has a lot towards this too. I just have to say that the name Santa Mira can be read as Saint Vision. And it's about seeing and not seeing. So, moving on. Let's talk about second episode, because we said we weren't going to take 1,000 hours to do this. And of course we are, but that's fine. Episode 2, all outies. All outies all the time. Same time frame, just from the opposite perspective, right? So we start exactly the same way. Like I said, these two things line up exactly for the first few minutes. Maybe the whole time, I don't know. But we finally get Rickon back.
Love Rickon. Oh! We won't do an evil check-in because my housemate has been away all fucking week, and I think that I'll be kicked out if I watch ahead without them. So I have two things to say. I think I mentioned last week Rickon was in an episode of Evil that I watched. Also, you know who I didn't mention?
Who?
Wallace Shawn.
Oh, yeah.
Wallace Shawn is like
everyone shows up in that show.
Recurrent character in Evil.
Yes.
If you haven't watched Evil, go watch Evil. I also have gotten no suggestions from you people, and I'm counting on you. Need a new show. You've got a little more time because I'm a week behind. I'll be finishing in the next few days. Anyway. I
have a From update also, but I think I'll save it for when you do your Evil update.
Okay.
We can do that next week.
Perfect. Anyway.
Yes.
I forget what made me think of that. Oh, Rickon. We get some Rickon, who I love.
Yeah. So we pick up again right where we left off in Rickon's house at his book party. He's very upset that his reading got interrupted by his child being stolen temporarily.
I know.
Why did Miss Cobel take the baby? Or Miss Selvig?
I mean, we don't know. She was also doing weird shit where she was posing as a lactation consultant.
Yeah.
To get lactation into
consultant,
that family.
Lactation fraud is a new phrase. Yes.
She said it like it's a thing we all know. Yeah. So, like, I do think part of it, when they say, like, she developed, I don't remember if he says erotic fixation, but something like that. Like, part of it is true. Like, I think she is more obsessed with Mark and his family than Lumen needs her to be. She's clearly put there to watch him, but we also know something else we didn't really talk about her in our little recap. That was my fault. But she's obsessed with Lumen. She's clearly invested, but also has her own, she's got like a weird little shrine and has
she went to the Egan School for Girls,
she also has, I don't know if we know for sure it's her child, but somebody close to her has some connection to Lumen and is no longer with us.
Right. So I've seen a lot of theories about this, which again, we can kind of go through at the end. Is she going to be like a Miss
Casey kind of situation, do we think?
Possibly. I also saw a theory that she's like an illegitimate Egan, which is why they keep her close. That like one of the Egan men had an illegitimate child.
That's so good. That's so good with this kind of like family dynasty kind of thing.
Right.
It's so like Kennedy family or like... Yeah.
I also saw a theory that Mark is actually her son, but she doesn't remember, or that he doesn't remember because of the Severance idea. I don't know. There's all sorts of weird...
I hate that, but that's also great for them calling it erotic and then it being extra gross if it's his fucking mom. Yeah. All very good stuff.
Yeah. So... we do have to get through this episode, though, without going off on a million tangents, and it's very difficult because they keep throwing things at us, like him calling his sister Persephone.
Yeah, he calls her Persephone. It's like a little joke because it's not her name, but Underworld Persephone is the and like it is. Oh, Jodie, I know we don't know how much time has actually passed, like over the course of season 1 and up to now in season 2, but man, is it always winter here?
Oh yeah. It's also always night almost. Like even when it's daytime, it looks like night.
Yeah. It's always like it feels like it's always heading into twilight or heading into dawn. It's like that weird kind of like golden hour, but not in a pleasant way necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we're getting in this episode really is, instead of what happens to the innies after they're brought back. It's what happens to the outies after the innies are sent back. So it's like Mark waking up after having shouted she's alive, Helena after she has made this rash announcement trying to cover her tracks, and Irving at home. We don't see the immediate aftermath of Irving pounding on Bert's door. We'd actually just see him a little bit later. So that's kind of left in the dark for us because we don't know what happened when Bert opened the door.
Right. And it's interesting, though, because maybe let's work through each one instead of bouncing around. Does that feel? So yeah. Irv is maybe the easiest one because that leaves off. The next time we see him, he's like in his apartment with his dog. And then he goes to a working payphone.
Now, I will say before that happens, we have Milchick showing up at everyone's houses. And he shows up and fires Irv.
You're right.
Yeah, so Milchick on his motorcycle in his leathers goes out to fire people and also then try to convince Mark to come back.
Right.
So he shows up at Irv's, asks how his night's been. Irv lies.
He says he was watching Barbara of Seville.
Yep. And so Milchick says, your innie is a friend of mine. He's a man of principle, which is rare, which makes this so difficult. Irv says, are you firing me? Did I break something? I have cash upstairs. And so that's the end of it. Irv closes the door. Next time we see Irv is, like you said, he is going to a payphone to call someone who we don't get any idea of who it is.
But it's so weird because it seems to me that it must be, if I were Irv, Audi Irv, I find the map with Bert's name on it. That's as much as I really know because I wasn't there when my Audi woke up. Although maybe it did, but my first thought was like, oh, is he calling Bert? Because he leaves a message and he says like, my innie got your message.
So the first thing he says when he calls is, okay, you're not picking up. I get it. And that's a very familiar sounding phrase. So there's a couple of possibilities here. There's two main ones that I've seen.
I'm going to cry. Okay.
The first one is Bert. Because we didn't see when Bert answered the door when he was banging on it. So the first theory or idea is that he's calling Bert. He's saying, okay, you're not picking up. I get it. Because he just saw him and had some sort of interaction. There's a lot of suspicion that Irv and Bert actually already knew each other outside somehow.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. What if they were...
Yeah.
How beautiful that if they were married originally and split, but they're still finding each other in this other life. Oh, my heart.
Keep coming back to the same person. Yep.
Oh, my heart.
So that's one possibility, right? Because Irv is the one who actually is the most kind of inching towards integration because like the black paint dripping in the first season, the repetitive painting over and over again. Irv has
there's like a crack.
Yeah. Irv has documents from Lumen in his house. So one of the theories that I saw that makes a lot of sense to me is that he's already working with Dr. Agavi because he's been at the company the longest. He used to work in administration. He was not severed when he first started working at Lumen. There's all this stuff about how his two lives are sort of merging more than others. So so the two theories I saw is that he's either calling Bert because they already had a pre-existing relationship of some sort, or he's calling Dr. Agavi because he's been working with her.
If that's true, and then his innie isn't aware of it yet. Bert, I keep doing that. Bert and Irvy. Audi Irv might be like better able to recognize that the overtime thing happened, that he woke up, that like losing time, you know what I mean? Like it just might.
Yep. I also saw a really interesting theory that, and I don't know, this is just somebody theorizing, but I liked it, that Dr. Agavi is doing this like physical reintegration procedure, but that maybe, and I don't know, this seems like a little left field, but I like it. Maybe there's also an attempt to reintegrate without that procedure to see if there are ways to cue, like maybe those millions of paintings of the hallway are Audi Irv's way of trying to see if a repeated image of some kind will break through to any, and the black paint dripping might be a sign of that.
It's a sign that it's happening.
Yeah.
Because it would be great if you could reintegrate without having to have...
Right. It's sort of like the triumph of the human spirit over technology, you know?
Exactly, yeah.
So, yeah. So that's all the theories about that phone call.
Now I'm crying because of Lost, because Irv is... Oh, listeners, Bert is Irv's constant. Maybe.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
My heart.
Yeah. And so we do, and the last thing we see is Bert is watching Irv. And I first saw that at Christopher Walken's eyes are a little watery. It could be that he's just an old man and his eyes are a little watery. It could be that he was a little weepy. It could be that he also could look like suspicious. Like maybe they don't know each other, you know?
But it's hard because, and this guy just showed up at his door and now he's like, what? Yeah.
They're giving us a lot of options.
And it's funny because I don't think I've said this on the podcast, but up until this show, Christopher Walken is a real fear of mine. Like, I will like actively avoid projects he's in. I just find him unsettling. Funny. I know that's the point of Christopher Walken, but in a way where other people are drawn to him because of that, I'm repelled. But I forget that's who I'm watching. He's so lovely.
He is so lovely in this. I know.
It's like, but wouldn't it be so smart and sneaky of them to spend, last season having us love him and Irv and Bert's relationship inside for his outie to be nefarious?
That'd be so cruel, though.
It would be. You're right.
I don't know. I want to believe in love. I want to believe in Irv and Bert.
Love isn't one of the 4 emotions they're sorting for in Lumen.
That's true.
Though maybe that's the point. They've overlooked it.
Yeah.
I just watched Interstellar for the first time in like a decade or whatever, and love can be a real force. Oh, really? You'd hate it.
I'm not a space person. Okay, so should we go to... So the 3 left have bigger storylines than Irv. Dylan's is more fun.
Let's do you
want to do Dylan?
Yeah.
Because Mark and Helly are kind of the most important.
Yeah.
To the story. Okay. Oh, Dylan. So Dylan, we see him leaving because he didn't wake up. He was the one performing the overtime contingency. We see him leaving after his altercation with Milchick. He's got an old-fashioned ice bag on his head. And the next time we see him is when Milchick shows up at his house to fire him.
Right.
Says he was in a physical altercation that he instigated. And Dylan's reaction is, what am I supposed to tell my wife?
I know. He's the only one who has people that he is like financially responsible for. A wife and 3 kids. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so we do get, I feel like even though a lot of what we see of Dylan is very humorous, we really do get a fuller sense of the burden of trying to provide for a family and what that does for him and how that's like a major driving factor.
And then he gets a job interview. Is that next for him?
Yeah, we see him in the car driving and listening to music. He goes to his interview and he gives himself a really sweet pep talk in the car. But yes, he's going to his interview at Great Doors.
Great Doors, which is such a man, this town is so fascinating.
Well, you do know the fact that Dan Erickson, the creator, was working in a door store or factory or whatever. So that's where that comes from. But this is such an amazing conversation.
It's really
good.
And
it's like the 2 of them are visually mirrored, the interviewer and Dylan. There's even like a very specific symmetrical split scene of them looking right at each other, looking exactly the same. The interview seems to be going super well until he finds out that Dylan was severed, and then it's just over.
Yeah.
But we can't not talk about the door conversation.
It's very good.
So he asks how old he was when he knew he loved doors.
5.
And he says about 5.
About 5.
And then, if you could be any kind of door, what would it be? And honestly, he gives an amazing answer.
Yeah. What would you have said? I had a thought. I
thought about this too. Mine is really depressing.
Oh no.
So I was listening to another podcast, and they asked each other the same question.
Oh,
they had great answers. And I kept trying to think about it. And at first I thought like a very plain mid-century door, like with like some cool window cutouts, but that's what I like, not what I am.
Right. What was your first thought though? Not your best thought?
Like an old slapping screen door that like doesn't close all the way.
This is
I mean, that's just dark though. Like that just says a little too much about me, I think. What was your answer?
Well, it's funny because it seems like you were thinking of like what door would you relate to. I was thinking like what would I say here to this interviewer? And my first thought was French doors because they're the fancy doors.
Right. Well, that was the answer that one of the other podcasters gave.
And also, if you're an innie and an outie,
right?
You know, if you're severed. But
well,
he doesn't
and so
say that.
I have to shout out to the Prestige TV podcast because obviously that's what I'm talking about on the Rigger Network. But Joanna Robinson, who's one of my favorite podcasters, also said French doors, but she said it's because regardless of which side you're on, you're still inside. And she's an inside kid.
Wait, what does that mean?
Because French doors are typically in between rooms too. So like, I think she was thinking of the French doors that lead from one room to the other.
Yeah.
Not leading to outside.
I was thinking, interesting.
Yeah.
I was thinking...
You're thinking like to a patio or whatever.
Yeah, that's 100% I was picturing to a patio.
She was thinking in between rooms, so you're always inside anyway. And they're kind of transparent.
The correct answer, though, the one that, like, if I had time to think about it for myself and wanted, like, a good, cool answer, you know about the South Philly doors that are such a big deal? I
don't think so.
They're so good. You'll love them.
I thought
they're like,
pocket doors was a pretty good answer.
Pocket
you
doors
just tuck yourself away when you're not needed. Like,
great answer. Just a little digression. They're these mid-century modern doors that were all over South Philly.
That's exactly the doors I was thinking of when I said when I was the cool answer for myself. Was these mid-century doors.
Yeah, they're like still a fixture in South Philly in particular, and like, but it's like a heartbreak you will sometimes see when they're building those new bullshit apartments and stuff, or like renovating. You'll see one like out on the curb, and they get snatched up right away. But they're so cool.
I mean, this is exactly what I was thinking of when I said my better self.
You're aspirational. You know what I'm putting on the vision board for 2025?
What?
Just a good door. A
good door. Yeah, totally. He also asked him about, he says, real quick, flat finish or eggshell? And Dylan says semi-gloss.
That's thinking outside the box. Wasn't even an option. He's a real go-getter.
Yeah, exactly. Reminds him of himself. Mm-hmm. He's also mad. The interviewer's mad that Lumen makes their doors in-house.
Yeah.
But
does he say it's hubris? I forget what word
it's hubris.
uses.
Yes, hubris. Exactly. But as soon as he finds out he's severed, that's it.
Yeah.
Interview over. And I think that's an important reminder that there's a lot of people in the outside world that are not on board with this. And like we saw that in the beginning of the first season with Rickon, but it's important to remember that there are people out there that are like very suspicious of Lumen and are like trying to expose them.
Yeah, and like Mark goes on it's like casually dating a woman in season 1 who we've forgotten about so far. But they go to like an anti-Severance kind of like show/rally kind of thing. There's like a band that really...
that's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah, exactly. We got to remember that that's out there too. Mm-hmm. And then we get his wife calling him. He's clearly frustrated, and she's just being very kind and soothing.
Stop being nice.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's kind of all we get of... Oh, no, wait.
And then he gets... Yeah. Because Milchick has to ask everybody back with the pineapple.
Milchick shows up with the pineapple. We don't really see another conversation with them, I don't think. But the next thing we see is him coming back to work.
Yeah.
We really need our like comic relief with Dylan. It's just so helpful.
Just one of the issues with Silo is like, I guess Steve Zahn is the closest thing we have to comic relief on that show, but he's so, I mean, I love him, but he's like so meek and like, he's not funny. He's just sweet and lovely. And so that makes him endearing and is a little bright spot. But like, again, and the same thing with my speculation about From is I can imagine there's not a whole lot of comic relief on that show.
I can't tell you if there's any.
But
Dylan also is spunky. Like, he's combative. He's like, he's mad about his belt. Like he's not taking shit lying down, even in his innie. So yeah, actually this is an interesting comparison with Helly also, which I guess we're about to get to, is like his innie, I think, is actually more spunky and confident because he's so good at his job at Lumen and he's struggling so much in the outside world that like his reaction to literally like this shadowy company, like one of their administrators attacking him is like yelling at him about his belt.
Yeah.
Versus in a job interview, him like meekly leaving because he is a severed person and they won't hire him. So it's like his innie is actually much more confident than his outie.
Do you think, though, that if it seems as we're about to learn how much this macro data refinement work hinges on Mark in particular, do we think Dylan's so good at his job because it doesn't actually matter and they don't actually care about his metrics and they're just letting him think he's very good at his job? And isn't that so sad if that's true?
It's entirely possible.
Oh, my heart. It's like when you give your like little brother the controller that's not plugged in and tell him he's doing really good at playing the game with
exactly
you. Makes me
but
really
honestly
sad.
Even if that's the case, like Dylan's good at other things.
Yeah,
Dylan's
he's
a good
great.
Human. He's a good people person.
Yeah,
he's good
and
at
maybe
people.
that's not true. Like, it seems that it all hinges on Mark, but it's possible it all hinged on Dylan before we got here. We don't really know what worked.
Right.
Like, they've been doing this for 2 years.
And it could be that each person is important to the macro data refining of a specific other person that they are connected to.
And it's just that, like, we know he finished his file at, before he got the waffle party, and so maybe that's why Mark's the last one in this little project who needs to finish his work, and that's why it doesn't matter so much about the other ones.
Right.
Like, who knows?
I also think that the reason clearly Mark is working on Gemma / Miss Casey, and that seems to be a pretty pressing situation.
Right.
But do you want to talk Helly next? Because I think Mark is sort of our center.
Yeah.
There's a lot on Helly, but we can kind of cover
a lot on Helly, but a
lot of it is like actual machinations, not like stuff that requires a lot of speculation, I think.
Right, exactly. It's kind of through Helly where you really see what was actually happening here.
Right. Yeah, so we come back to Helly, and she is... The first thing we see is... I just have to take a side note for the visuals. Like, as anyone ever talks about with this show, but
rightly so.
There's so many beautifully shot scenes in this episode specifically. Like, everybody's talking about that intro of the first episode with the running through the hallways, but the number of shots of the part of the building with these giant windows and a person standing in it shot from the outside of the building, giving us the context of the space. Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. Incredible. So she's standing at the window. She's touching her neck, which reminds us, of course, that it's not that long ago that Helly tried to kill herself.
Exactly.
We see a lot of this Mr. Drummond this episode as well. The Lumen higher up employee of some kind that is security coded, but might be more than that.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like, he's got like a prison tattoo with the word frolic on his hand, which is interesting. And like, he also, just real quick, did you look at his IMDb credits? Mm-mm. Was he familiar to you?
He looked familiar, yeah.
Not for me. A show that I haven't watched yet that I think you will resent me a little bit forever until I finally do.
6 Feet Under?
No.
Wait, how many other shows are there that I'm going to resent you for?
Just one that I can think of. Somebody Somewhere?
Oh, he's the Nordic guy. What the fuck is it? They call him...
I know what his last name is.
Iceland. They call him Iceland because he's from Iceland, and that's just what they have decided to call him because his name is very complicated.
And his, it's like Viglander Iceland Hjardarson.
In Somebody Somewhere, he's this like farmer with a big beard and wearing lots of like farm clothes. And this is like the cleaned up version in a suit. So I didn't quite recognize him. But yeah, so he's more than just security, I think.
For sure, right?
Yeah. This is the fetid Moppet moment. Her ancient father.
I know.
That.
And I was like, hey, Kier, is that you? But I don't think we've gotten to the point of, except the revolving that they mentioned at the end of last season. It
There's
feels
so many
like it's
theories
something.
About it.
That's why I'm like, oh, maybe these are all red herrings, because it feels like they're trying to bring Kier back, but it also feels like they want us to think that this like process has been ongoing forever, and that
Exactly.
maybe Kier is still with us. So
Yeah.
maybe
And
it's that it has to be biological to work now, and they're trying to find a way for it to like expand this out to other, like, I don't know.
Maybe. But
yeah.
it's a different version, it seems like, of James Egan than we saw in the end of last season, where he's being very sweet to her as she's about to go on stage. And now he like looks like he could not hate anyone more. But she doesn't look very phased. So this to me feels like she's seen this side of him a lot.
Right. It just seems so clear that like it's one of those disgusting, weird, fucked up, wealthy, old money families where like they act like family is the most important thing, but really it's just continuing the family line. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
well, and it's this weird, also this conflation of power, financial, political, whatever power with godlikeness,
Right.
godliness,
Exactly.
you know,
Yeah.
like the idea of Kier as God and also a company founder.
right. Yeah.
Gee,
It's
what does
all-
that sound like?
Yeah.
But we find out kind of what Helena is being forced to do, or is choosing to do, to clean up her mess. They commandeered all the footage. She meets with Cobel to thank her for her help with the cleanup. This is another really stilted conversation using some really funny language. Cobel says an apology is warranted.
It reminded
And-
me of in season 1 when it's like a handshake is available upon request.
Exactly. And Helena gives her a very insincere sounding apology from everyone, herself,
Right.
her father, the board.
Yeah.
But Cobel says, I welcome your contrition. Again, contrition is like a Catholic thing.
Yeah.
It's like a religion thing.
That's like another pin in all of this, is how much of this feels so weirdly religious, like
Yeah, or cult-like.
cult-like.
Yeah. But Cobel's clearly not happy because she wants to go back to the severed floor, and they're not doing that. They're creating some bullshit severance advisory council for her to head.
She's totally right. Like, they're not doing this as a reward or a thank you the way that Helly pretends. It's to keep watch on her.
Yeah. Yeah. She says, you don't value me, you fear me. And Helly says, we fear no one.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. Helena has to record a mea culpa. It's funny, we don't really know who this is for, whether it's for the public or for the board or whatever, but she's doing this on, again, super old technology. And her claim is that she mixed alcohol with a non-Lumen medicine for an arm rash.
Man, the marketing department, the comms department at Lumen,
They're on
because even down to like, it's not a Lumen medication.
Right. Gotta
and
get
so
that
it's
in.
Like, can't blame Lumen, and also I fucked up by using a medication that wasn't, because we know Lumen is involved in pharmaceuticals as well. So
Yeah. They're like a Johnson
it's like
Johnson style company.
Exactly.
Based in New Jersey. Helena in this video says, I'm also human, just like my innie and just like you, which is weirdly ominous. We also see her watching and replaying videos, the surveillance videos of them coming back to work, and also the kiss beforehand.
Yeah, because I don't think it's occurred to Helly that like her innie or outie could act against the Egan family wishes.
And also that
Hey,
she clearly...
Egan sounds like again. So,
Yes, you're right. You're right. It does. I also was just going to say that I don't think she's gotten a lot of affection in her life. And so that's why she's so awkward when he hugs her. But like, then she sees how she is with him on the inside when they kiss and everything. And she keeps like watching it from different angles.
yeah, it's
So-
possible like the only kiss she's ever had is one she can't remember.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's kind of all we see. We see her just trying to mop up the mess that she made. I will note one more little hint was that there's one other scene after this we see her in, but when she's rewinding and watching that video, her finger on the forward and rewind button on the surveillance camera is much more confident than her hand was trying to find the switch for the computer.
Right.
Like we've seen that same shot of that for a reason.
Right.
But then when Mark is coming back to work, we do get a scene of Helena Drummond and Milchick talking about them. And this is when we find out that they're giving him Helly, theoretically.
Right. Yeah. Because it's, as we find out, again, Mark is the most important one out of the four of them. And so they're willing to do whatever to get him to finish this work.
Right. It's also when we find out that the 5 months is definitely a lie because Milchick says, I had 48 hours to pull this together. Hopefully they have some chemistry. They say, we don't need chemistry. We need Mark to complete Cold Harbor.
So is it just they want Mark to think 5 months have passed so it is plausible that all of these reforms and stuff they're pretending they're putting into place?
I mean, that's really the only current explanation I have. I wonder why, for like, if there's any other reason that the 5 months is a thing. But yeah, so this is when we find out that Helly, I mean, we know already that Helly goes back, but this is where we see her reaction when they're talking about it. And she has a specific look on her face that could be resigned to it, that could be unhappy. It's kind of hard to say.
Right.
This is the thing that convinced me fully, though, this last scene with Helly, that she's Helena, because everyone's coming. We get the end is the beginning. We get everybody coming back to work, right? We see Mark come in as the other employees are leaving, cursing out Lumen. He goes in. According to the clock on the wall, 1 minute later, Dylan shows up, does the locker thing, swaps out his badge, gets wanded, goes in the elevator. Irv shows up, swaps his badge, gets wanded, goes in the elevator. Helly shows up. She comes from the inside, first of all. She's not coming from the outside door. She swaps badges. She's not just putting on a badge. She takes off a badge, puts on a new badge. She looks a little worried. She gets in the elevator. Every time someone gets in the elevator, goes to a severed floor, you know what I'm going to say. There's two dings. There's a ding when they first get in the elevator. Somebody broke this down literally down to the note that it is. It's like a G and a C or something. Anyway, so when they get in the elevator, there's an initial ding. And then when they get to the severed floor and the severance procedure is complete, there's a second ding. There is no second ding with Helly.
Right.
It's just...
So whatever activates the implant in their brain is not activated for her.
Exactly.
And yeah. I don't think this, obviously, then, the sound cue isn't just for us. There's some mechanism happening there. I wonder what I'm just so interested in the science they've created for this show.
Yeah, super interesting. But after all of that evidence, to me, that's Helena in there.
Yeah.
Clearly.
I was curious, I'm also convinced it's Helena. I'm curious if the show wants us to be convinced or if we're supposed to be curious.
It's always, is it a double cross or is it just that we're figuring it out?
Yeah.
But, okay.
So, Mark.
Let's talk about Mark. Where do we find Mark?
Mark wakes up as Outie Mark in Devin and Rickon's house. She says, is it you now? Right after the baby's been found and Miss Selvig is gone.
I also thought that it was a nice little flip there that they did where in the end of the last episode of season 1, we see Mark from the front yelling she's alive. And then in this scene, we see the back of his head and we see who he's talking to and how they're reacting. Right. It's a nice little flip. And he's still holding the photo in his hand.
And then then everybody kind of leaves, right?
The party, yeah.
The party.
They were at the book party still.
Yeah. And somebody says, I thought it was so odd. Somebody says to Rickon, don't punish the baby, Rickon. It wasn't her fault.
That was Rebecca.
Was it Rebecca? These names.
I know.
It's a weird thing to say. A weird thing to say.
I know.
But they're debating. Well, Mark is refusing to debate, but they're saying she's alive. You're obviously talking about the baby because the baby had just been missing. Yep. They're clearly trying to justify that.
Yeah. But Devin doesn't seem convinced. Rickon and Mark are both obviously it was about the baby.
Right. And I think Rickon believes it. Mark is refusing to consider it could be anything else to allow himself to believe it or not. And then Devin is saying it. She even says, let's Occam's reason it.
Occam's raisin. Wow. Wow.
Incredible.
Wow.
She's trying to Occam's
So it's obviously a raisin. The easiest solution is just raisin.
So funny.
Sorry. Oh my god. Okay.
Occam's razor it. So that's what's going on there. Milchick shows up very
But before
quickly.
that, I just really want to point out a couple things. Rickon refers to his innie as his workie, which is an interesting turn of phrase. The other thing that they say, Rickon says, I believe, is that your innie came out to alert us to the abuses. So that was not missed, right?
Right.
Also, he is very happy that his book has made it to the inside and that everyone is very inspired by it. We can't skip over the Rickon stuff. Rickon's the best.
So good. I love Rickon so much.
But as you said, then Milchick shows up.
And they have such a weird, stilted, strange...
They all sit at the table. We get a very specific shot of Milchick's helmet, which to somebody
Rickon
said,
comments on.
Yeah. Somebody said it made it seem like there was maybe a camera in the helmet.
Okay. Yeah.
Like
I
why it
could
was
see
placed
that.
specifically where it was. But nobody is giving Milchick any info, really, which is nice.
Yeah.
Devin throws a napkin or a towel over the picture so he can't see that the photo was out.
Even though Milchick, that it was out. Milchick obviously knows that Gemma is Miss Casey. Like
He knows, but he doesn't know necessarily that Mark knows because
Right,
she covered that picture.
exactly.
Yeah, he doesn't know what he did or said or found out in the 39 minutes
right.
that they were all awake. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have this conversation. They ask if Mark's going to be punished, and Milchick says we have no punishments at Lumen, which we know is not
A lie.
true at all, even a little bit. This is when the lactation fraud thing comes up. Milchick has gone and fired everybody else.
Yep.
Mark, there's no chance that that's going to happen.
Nope.
They need Mark back.
They need
now.
it back.
And
Yep.
so he's trying to convince him.
Yeah, he says, I hope to see you Monday. Mark says, yeah, I don't know, man. And then Milchick says, what your innie did was very brave.
So dirty.
I'd hate to reward his courage with non-existence.
Non-existence.
Yes.
Yeah.
The next thing we get with Mark is the next day. We see him looking out his window a bunch, looking at Miss Cobel's house, seeing her white rabbit, which is the name of her car, but also Alice in Wonderland. Duh.
Right.
But Devin texts and asks him to meet at the diner for some bad diner food, which I think is not a great thing to say because diner food is wonderful.
That's right.
It's not bad. But they go back to, once again, I want to remind everyone, this is the Phoenicia Diner in Phoenicia, New York, in the Catskills. They have amazing food and amazing coffee, and you should definitely go there if you're ever in the Catskills. It's very, very busy on the weekends, so.
It's pips.
It's never been this empty ever. This diner is extremely popular.
Nobody is ever there. And I think...
And yet they don't notice the guy obviously listening to them.
I know. The only time we ever see anywhere crowded in this show is when they went to that anti-Lumen Severance rally, whatever. But this town is so sparse. But
It's
in a way...
feels very controlled or very fake or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just so strange. But yeah, they have this conversation at the diner that is brutal.
Yeah. But also has some really significant things said in it because basically she wants to confirm that he meant the baby and not Gemma. And Mark is really defensive. And he says, you remember I identified her, right? I saw her body.
Which,
but
who
then
knows?
he says, and this is also a pretty hard diss on Rickon. He says, if Rickon died and his body burned, I'd be sad for you, but I wouldn't be affected, which is rough. But that implies that her body was burned, therefore possibly unrecognizable.
Or the body that he saw anyway.
Exactly.
Was burned.
Exactly. Yep. So that's, I think, the things we're meant to pick up on from that conversation. He storms off. We notice that Mr. Drummond is sitting there listening. This is when we see the frolic tattoo. He goes back to feed his fish and look out the window.
And change a light bulb.
Right, because that's when Milchick shows up. And with the pineapple basket, of course.
Right. But he offers him a 20% bump to his, which seems like, it just feels like he lives in a town where it doesn't matter how much money you make.
Yeah.
Because, like,
Yep.
I don't know that money would do, but he also offers a full investigation into the claims, regular wellness checks from an independent organization, which, again, how would Audi know? Like, there's just no, they could do anything. And then Milchick says, like, during your interview, you mentioned Gemma's death as a primary motivator. And then he asks him, this feels like psychic cold reading kind of like shit. Cause he says, do you remember what you said? Mm-hmm. And Mark says no. And so now Milchick can say anything if Mark doesn't remember what he said. Like he asks him first.
But this does sound like the depressed version of Mark that we've seen. He says, since she died, every day feels like a year. That he felt like he was choking on her ghost. Would you say that in an interview? I don't know. But it does certainly sound like the way Mark was feeling. Mm-hmm. And he says, the Mark I've come to know at Lumen is happy. He knows nothing of the pain I see in you right now. He's found love. And Mark asks, with who? And then he ignores the question and says, the solace he has found down there will make its way to you. It will just take time. Excuse me?
Yeah, that is...
How will it make its way if they're two separate people?
Right. It's
because also, they're connected still.
Right. Also, there's so much in a way that I don't remember them reminding us over and over again in season 1 of down there, up there. They want us to really remember that there is that separation is that vertical distance for some reason. There's not as much in there, up there, down there talk in season 1. I don't know why that stuck out to me. But
well, it reminds me of the fact that it seems like a lot of the time when Milchick is framing this to the Audis, he's framing it as your innie betrayed you, or your innie is doing this other thing, or they're totally separate. But then he says this line about how it will make its way to you. And it's okay. It's
right. You're either fully lying and you know it, or we're being reminded that, or maybe not reminded, being introduced to the idea that Severance, I realized I was going to have to say the title of the show, is maybe, and we know it's not because of Petey, but that maybe that Severance, like you said, can sort of be
that things can cut through
bridged, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Depending on how strong they are,
right?
So Mark does go back to work.
Maybe love's the only thing that can really cross that divide,
Maybe.
But yeah.
Mark shows up at work. It's so funny. It reminded me the scene of him sitting in the car before work in the first episode where he's crying. Yeah. And now he just looks defeated. Mm-hmm. But we get a little bit of a quick recap of the outside of what we saw before. He comes and goes for 3 days. He leaves early the day that he rebelled. And then after that, we see him leaving work that last time, goes home, sees that Cobel's light is on. And this is the last scene that we get. He confronts Cobel and says, who are you? I actually wrote down this whole conversation because it's really funny. Yeah. He says, who are you? She says, I thought you were quitting. And he says, I trusted you. I told you what I'd gone through these last 2 years. You were in my house. I ate your shitty cookies. And she doesn't say anything. She says, they convinced you to stay. Mm-hmm. Was a pineapple involved? You're so easy to sway. And he says, so that's it, you're leaving. And she's clearly trying not to talk to him, but also not to create a big confrontation.
Yeah.
But he stands in front of her car and yells, why did you do this? What the fuck is this all about? And she looks like she might speak, and they're staring at each other. And then something changes in his face and he says, do you know something about Gemma?
Right.
And there's this extended pause. And
then she
screams
and lays on the horn and blows past
almost hits him. Yeah.
And and watching this, is she, because we don't know, she says the last we've seen her talking with the folks at Lumen, she says, I'll put some thought into coming back.
Right.
So we don't know, is she leaving because they need Mark to believe she's not a presence anymore, or is she leaving because she's really leaving?
Right. Like, what side of this is she going to end up on? You know, is she going to feel so betrayed by the company's like treatment of her that she goes to the other side, or is she still playing along with Lumen?
Right. Especially because we know she's got something. There's like somebody in her life, in her past at least, that she seems like that's like the number one priority to her, is whatever is going on with that.
Right.
Then, like, I think that's where her actual loyalty is, and that means she, you know, her severing herself from Lumen.
Well, and that's another theory,
unlikely.
is that she's actually a severed person, because she's so wildly different when she's at work than when she's Miss Selvig at home. But I don't know that I buy that, because there's so much like knowingness in Miss Selvig.
Yeah. Unless she's figured out a way to communicate the two. Yeah. Yeah, I've never gotten that impression, but maybe. I still think those people at the dinner party in season 1, I just watched the first episode like last week for the first time since I watched it for this.
Yeah.
They're so... It's not even just that they're vapid idiots. They feel like they... And I love Dylan because I know that he is a 2-year... Well, however long he's worked at Lumen. But he's a baby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and that's how they feel.
I
but
know.
Because they're out in the real world, it's annoying.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. They feel like there's just black holes in their brain of like things that they don't understand and that they would if they were normal people.
Right. But it feels like Lumen would have tabs on any innie who made it out, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So who knows?
No, I know. It is interesting. I also just want to put a note for the new intro that we see in episode 2.
It's really fun.
It's really fun. It's also been told like kind of flat out that there's references in that of things we're going to see this season. Ooh. Interestingly enough, at the very end, there's a baby that looks like that has a Kier head on it crawling around.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And we know they're like also clearly interested in like actual physical birth, because that's the other thing is Devin was pregnant.
Yeah.
She just had this baby, and her like toward the end of season 1, she meets this woman who had a baby, and we figure out that probably what happened was she's like a congressman's wife or something like that. I forget his role exactly, but it's like the innie is the one giving birth. So that innie was on the outside. They woke her up to give birth so that the outie, which is horrific.
Can you imagine your only existence as an innie or as a person is to give birth?
Horrifying.
And then you're gone.
Right.
Oh,
it's just truly horrific.
Yeah. Yep.
Awful.
Yeah. So we should keep an eye on that intro, the opening credits. Mm-hmm. So,
also, just real quick, in that little like Jurassic Park Dino DNA video that we see, Kier can fly.
Yeah.
It's like such propaganda that
I mean, the building can talk, Andrea.
Yeah.
It has eyeballs.
Yeah. But also, Kier, like, there's no reason that he should need to fly in that video. Exactly.
He's a god. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What a fun show.
There's a couple of little... I don't know how much... We've already done some theory diving. Mm-hmm. Let's see. I just wanted to see if there was anything I'd missed that I'd written down. No, I think there's been some speculation about who the board is and whether it's just the consciousness of like previous Egans, right? Somebody... Right.
Does Kier exist in spirit but not in body right now?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, so there's like some little notes in there, some little Easter eggs, like the photo from the parade that they theoretically gave to the Lumen employees. It's like a Photoshop of the work picture of the 4 of them into JFK's ticker tape parade in New York City.
Perfect.
Like, yeah, there's been some sleuthing about the articles on that fake newspaper. One is about something called the Baird Creek Bandit, and and Baird Creek is where Mark lives. So it's just like, yeah. The other article I think is about Rickon.
You think that's like the Westfield Watcher, or do you think it's like the
what's the other
Gibbsboro
one?
Ghoul?
The Gibbsboro Ghoul. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So soon.
I know.
It's like less
so
than
soon.
3 weeks away.
I know. So I think we'll wrap up Severance there for now. I'm obviously going to keep watching. We are pivoting to our
I
primary
don't know that we'll
inciting.
do, in terms of Severance, I'm sure we'll find some way to check back in, whether that'll be at the end of our episodes or if we'll do a season wrap up, or we'll figure it out. But this won't be the last you'll hear from us about Severance for sure.
No, because I'm back in, but yes,
we've got
two more episodes before we're actually talking about a brand new episode of Yellowjackets 2. In fact,
we're
incredible.
Wow,
incredible.
I'm genuinely so excited. I thought this day may never come.
I know.
If we had a full-time editor, I would send them off on a quest of us mentioning every time we speculated about how long it was going to be until Yellowjackets came back.
Oh my God. I know. But we will be back for that. But so I think we should talk about what we're going to do for the next 2 weeks, because so just as a reminder for everyone, Yellowjackets season 3 premieres February 14th with 2 new episodes.
That's right.
Very exciting. Happy to say I have that Monday off, so I will have plenty of time, even though we'll probably record before then. But
we're going to have to record before then because our episode is going to be out that day.
Right. But I have a long weekend to recover from my Yellowjackets obsession.
Well, because I'm sure we're going to record a 12-hour episode.
Exactly. I'm going to need Monday to sleep.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
That's a little programming note.
Yes.
We are going to. I'm saying it now so that it will be. I'm speaking it into existence. I'm manifesting this for myself. We are going to be shifting to Monday release for Yellowjackets so that we can be current with the conversation, and that's the plan. Our next 2 episodes, I'm going to aim to have them out on Monday, but we'll see how that goes. But by the first episode of season 3, we'll be on a Monday release schedule. So hopefully people can get their Yellowjackets, recap theory fix a little sooner than we've done in the past.
Yeah. And so for our next 2 episodes, we're going to kind of spend some time gearing up, because a lot has come out in terms of trailers and behind the scenes photos and theorizing and all of that. And we've been kind of just putting a pin in all of that, kind of noting it and, waiting until there was more of a critical mass. And we were closer to the opening of the new season. So next week, we're going to do a little, not recap, but like a little discussion of what's happened so far, where we are. It will be full of spoilers. So if you haven't caught up, now is the time.
Yeah, but this is not going to catch you up.
No.
So go watch seasons 1 and 2 if you haven't yet. And please, if you came into the show after our Yellowjackets, as on our hiatus, and haven't watched Yellowjackets, it's so fun.
Go binge
Please stick
that
around.
shit.
Go binge. Yeah.
Go binge.
You can burn through it before we talk again.
Go get COVID and watch the entire thing like Andrea did. I'm kidding. Don't get COVID. It's terrible.
Yeah, don't get COVID.
Take a couple of days off from life. Life is crazy and terrible right now. Go watch some teen girls get stuck in the wilderness.
It's so fun.
Yeah. So next week we're going to do kind of a, I keep using the word recap. It's not the right word, because we're not going to go through the episodes and plot points. But yeah, exactly. What happened, what we're interested in seeing, all of that. And then the week after that, the week before Yellowjackets comes back, we're going to do sort of a theory deep dive.
Gonna throw some pins in the corkboard.
Pins in the old corkboard, exactly. We're going to go through the trailers. We're going to go through all the behind-the-scenes photos. We're going to go through some of the Reddit theories and really kind of set ourselves up. So the next 2 weeks are going to be our Yellowjackets prep work / homework before getting back in.
And what you can do in the meantime is what Jodie and I are also going to do, as we always do, and have I shouldn't say always, we only have one other season, put your predictions for what we're going to hear on the soundtrack.
Oh, the soundtrack. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So
maybe
that.
We'll talk about that too. Like what songs we hope to hear or think we might hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
Send those in to us. Where can they do that if they wanted to let us know what they're looking forward to hearing?
It's almost like you're a professional podcaster.
Almost.
They can email us all their predictions and ideas at watcherspodnj@gmail.com. And they can find us on Instagram at watcherspodnj. They can find me on Instagram at Jodie_Mim, JODIE_MIM.
And I'm at AQ_Andrea_Q.
Guess what?
What?
We're going to see them next week in the wilderness.
In the wilderness.
And in New Jersey.
And in New Jersey.
Oh, so exciting.
Hell yeah. Can you believe it?
I can't believe it.
Wow,
it's coming
wow.
back. Okay, bye.
Bye.